Good morning, Mr. Daniels.
Good morning.
Congratulations.
Morning.
Sean, you handshake a lot, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
How you feeling, Professor Daniels?
Use it to
Let's
create
go,
events or
Kwesi.
to connect to.
Hi, Kwesi. Hi, you're on mute, so I can't hear you. But I wanted to ask, do you want to wait another minute or two before you start your presentation?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Kwesi, I
I'm
wanted to
glad you
ask.
said something.
Sure. Do you want to add me as a co-host so that I can add people if they hop on the Zoom link once you've started presenting?
Yes, let me see how to do that.
Hi, Kwesi. Hi, you're on mute, so I can't hear you. But I wanted to ask, do you want to wait another minute or two before you start your presentation?
I'm not sure how to add you as a co-host.
Oh, let's see. You should be able to
Let's see.
like double click on my photo and then add as co-host, or from the list of participants on the right pane to right click and then add me as a co-host.
I'm looking. Do you know how to add as a co-host? Hamel?
Yes, so if you look at the list of participants, if you right click on my name, I think you should be able to say add as co-host. But Kwesi, if it's not, if you don't see it, let's not worry about it. I feel like you have a great crowd here.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. I'll if they don't get in before then, heck.
All right, great. Well, it's 6 after. Are you ready to begin, Kwesi?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you all for coming to hear Kwesi Daniels give his dissertation defense. So we'll start off with Kwesi's presentation, and once he's concluded the presentation, we'll have time for a question and answer period. So with that, Kwesi, I'll turn it over to you. I'm really looking forward to this.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being here. It's an honor to share this time with everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and get started because in the interest of time, we don't have a lot of time. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Kwesi. I just saw a note that you are recording your presentation live on YouTube. And so I just wanted to make the announcement so that everybody was aware. So if anybody doesn't want to be captured on YouTube, please turn off your camera. And then maybe for the sake of not having interruptions during the presentation, if everybody could mute their mic until the Q&A period, I think that would make things run smoothly. So Kwesi, I apologize for interrupting, but I just wanted to make that announcement.
No, that's a great point. Do not want anybody on camera if they don't want to be. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see? Perfect. Okay, so welcome. I am Kwesi Daniels, and it is a true pleasure to be here. Thank you for everybody that is joining from afar. You're here to learn about the research that I've been conducting over the last 3 years. And the title of my dissertation is We Are Here, the social impact of Drexel University's expansion upon Mantua and Powelton Village. And before I begin, I would like to acknowledge my committee members. First, Dr. Christina Rosen, my advisor, Dr. Hamill Pearsall, Dr. Barbara Furman, and Dr. Randy Mason, other committee members. Thank you all for all the guidance that you've given me over the last 3 years of this engagement. The support that you've given at different times has helped me get to this point, and I'm truly honored by all of the comments that you've given me up to this point. Y'all are my rock stars. So thank you so much for all of your support through the years. Okay. I also like to give a very special thank you, first of all, to God. This truly is a work that would not have happened if I did not have a higher power behind me, given all the things that I've dealt with as a parent and just a slew of things. Next, my wife, Aaliyah, of 15 years, and my children, Indigo, Adia, Harmony, Serenity, and Ajna. Thank you all for supporting me for the last 7 years, from Newark to Philly to Tuskegee. I mean, y'all have really rocked out. And then Doctors Carolyn Adams, Worth Hayes, Sonia Peterson Lewis, and Michelle Robinson. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to read my dissertation and provide me with your valuable insights. To the Mantua and Politan Village residents, please, I thank y'all for all the time that y'all provided me in allowing me to learn about what it's like to be in your communities. And then lastly, I would like to thank the numerous family and friends. If everybody can mute your line, I'm getting some feedback. I'd like to just thank the numerous family and friends who've assisted with us, with me throughout the various parts of this process, from watching our children to calling and checking up on me. Your support has been everything. Now, before we go into the research, I want to qualify myself. Why am I here? What allows me to have this conversation? And first off, I hold 2 degrees in architecture, a Bachelor of Architecture from Tuskegee University and a Master's of Architecture from the University of Illinois at Chicago. I also hold a Master of Sustainability and Management from Columbia University, and I started this work in 2013 at Temple. Professionally, I have 20 years of experience in architecture, spanning from sustainability to historic preservation work, including in Philadelphia. And I have 18 years of higher education teaching experience. And I'm currently the Department Head of Architecture at Tuskegee University. But what I believe really grounds me more than anything else is the way that I was personally prepared to conduct this work. So I engaged this work by, it really was a commitment by myself and my family to move to North Philadelphia, outside the patrol boundaries of Temple University, primarily so I could understand the challenges and opportunities of living in Philadelphia. And I'll talk about this part of the process a little bit later, because this is what grounds a lot of this research from what's known as a humanization approach. This mural, we were like a big family, close together, like our houses until the bulldozers of urban renewal came around. They tore down our neighborhood, but not our spirits. The Black Bottom still is home in our hearts. This inscription is on this mural, or should I say was on this mural. And this mural speaks what used to be on this building. This is University City High School before it was torn down. And this is University City High School at the bottom now. The mural we just looked at speaks to 2 things. One is urban renewal, and we'll be discussing very briefly the role that universities have played in that process. And it speaks to the changes that are happening right now that are being prompted by university expansion. Urban renewal. In 1965, Philadelphia designated specific areas of the city for urban renewal. And urban renewal was the area that I'm studying is this area here. You'll see more maps that clarify that a little bit better. I'm showing this so that you understand that this map for urban renewal still stands today. And in 1965, the University of Pennsylvania, in collaboration with the Philadelphia Urban Redevelopment Authority, displaced over 600 West Philadelphia families during their urban renewal program as they built the University City Science Center. The area in red that you see was known as the Black Bottom. It was a section of West Philadelphia that was predominantly African-American. And this area is only blocks away from Mantua and Politan Village, the 2 areas that I'm researching. This is one of the reasons why I'm doing this research, because the displacement of 600 residents in order to expand the university has serious social implications that we've already explored. And this research is aimed to address that. As we can see in this image, the area in the background is the former University City High School site that Drexel University purchased, and it is now being developed into the Powell Elementary and Science Leadership Academy. As we see in this image, Drexel University, the School District of Philadelphia, and a series of developers are participating in this process. So my research question is, what is the social impact of Drexel University's expansion upon Mantua and Powelton Village? And that question is grounded in the elements that I just brought to your attention regarding urban renewal and the process that UPenn engaged in. While this research is not about UPenn, it is about the role that a university plays in the displacement or the impact on existing residents. This is Philadelphia. And my research is on the west side of Philadelphia, left of the Schuylkill River, which is this image here. And we can see Drexel University, and the research boundaries are Mantua and Powelton Village. Powelton is adjacent, and a portion of Drexel is also embedded inside of Powelton Village. And Mantua is the community that is immediately north of Drexel University. Philadelphia is a city that is predominantly African-American, as you can see from this map here. And the maps on the side are blow-ups of the Mantua and Powelton Village area, also showing the surrounding area. And one of the things that's most stark about this, as you can see, is the Powelton Village, parts of Powelton Village and all of Mantua and portions beyond are predominantly African-American. However, the portions of Powelton Village where Drexel University is located are predominantly Asian and white, which means that there's a real racial relationship regarding the transformation of this community that has to be explored if we're going to engage in any kind of expansion efforts. So what does the expansion look like? Currently, the expansion that Drexel University is engaging in is happening along Market Street, and it is expanding along 34th Street and 33rd. The major component of that expansion is happening around the Schuylkill Yards project, which is land that Drexel already owns. And it is now expanding onto the former University City High School site, which they purchased from the city of Philadelphia. Now, this expansion is not just Drexel. What Drexel is doing is that they're creating a market for students. And the area in yellow really demonstrates the small scale developers expansion into Mantua and Powelton Village, although Powelton was already predominantly students. The expansion of the small scale developers in order to meet the needs that Drexel is bringing to the table with their expansion of their student population is what is causing serious social issues in this community. Or should I say exasperating existing social issues that have been there for a long time. Drexel University's expansion plans call for creating an urban campus district that's distinguished by livability, sustainability, and innovation with 4 principles. It wants to distinguish Drexel's campus as a vibrant, modern urban university district, as you can see from map 1. 2, to bring the campus to the street, as you can see in map 2. To draw the community together around shared places in map 3. And to expand the innovation community, as you can see in map 4. And as they do this, Powelton Village and Mantua will be the recipients of whatever change takes place. Unfortunately, neither of the plans mention the history or the culture of the two neighborhoods as an important characteristic, nor do they state how the transformation will retain the existing long-term residents. When we look at why is this happening right now, what's important to realize is that Drexel University, in its close proximity to Mantua and Powelton Village, they are in the nexus of access to all of the major Philadelphia transportation places. They're within 5-mile range of Delaware Expressway, Navy Yard, Philadelphia Airport. They're within 1 mile of 30th Street Station. They're within walking distance of the subway. So in terms of public transportation, West Philadelphia is the place to be. Additionally, they're in close proximity to all the major universities. And from the University of Sciences, Thomas Jefferson University, Temple University, LaSalle is the only university that's within a 5-mile range. Everyone else is much closer. So this is a strong area for development because of all of these amenities, and the innovation district really leverages the close proximity of educational institutions for the creation of that district. Now, when we zoom in closer, we can see that Powelton Village and Mantua are also in close proximity to many education, and really within a 1-mile radius of many medical educational sites around Philadelphia. I won't go into detail. You can see that from the map. And one of the other elements, the strong social components of this, is Mantua and Powelton Village's close proximity to many of the cultural sites. This map shows its proximity to the museums. It's just a walk across the Spring Garden Street Bridge or across down Market Street in order to get to a lot of these cultural institutions. The zoo is also right up the street, right up 34th Street. So prime location for many cultural activities. And all of these are being promoted by Drexel University to attract developers and investors into this space, in addition to students, faculty, and researchers. Now, Drexel's master plan also discusses sustainability as one of its frameworks for the development of an urban campus district. That fact alone necessitates the evaluation of the concept of sustainability within the constructs of sustainable development. Now, sustainable development is defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This is a definition that was developed by Brundtland Commission in a report called Our Common Future, and it's been really the foundational principle and definition that's been used to explore this idea of sustainability. And within that report, what was emphasized is that the idea of needs, particularly as it relates to the world's population of poor people. And unfortunately, Mantua and Powelton Village are both communities that are defined as predominantly poor populations, which means that in order to understand how to properly develop for these communities, you have to take into consideration the needs of the people when you do development. Now, there are 3 hallmark ideas that support the sustainability framework. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about those frameworks, but I do want to recognize that all of these frameworks include the social component. The economy, the environment are included, but the social component is in there. However, oftentimes the social component is not actually addressed. The economy and the environment are measured, and the belief is usually that by addressing the economy, by providing jobs, by providing more money and throwing money at a problem, that you will address social needs of the people by increasing their quality of life. The same holds true for the environment. The belief is that by addressing the needs of the environment, you will also address the needs of society. Unfortunately, that is not true. We can see with the recent rulings regarding Standing Rock and the NEPA ruling by President Trump that has sought to roll back those. NEPA is a requirement for social impact assessment, environmental impact assessment. We all know about Frank Rizzo and his statute that was recently brought down, started with the Black Lives Matter movement to pull it down, and then it was continued by the mayor of Philadelphia. And in this image, a riot is the language of the unheard. What we see right now is a lot of people whose voices are not being heard, but many decisions have historically been made for them and continue to be made for them. That is no different than what's going on right now with development in Mantua and Powelton Village. To quote one of the gentlemen that I spoke with during my interviews, we hope they don't burn it down. That was his sentiment because there's so much change, and you'll see what that looks like. There's so much change that's happening that people that are in these communities that feel themselves being pushed out and further marginalized as others are moving in and taking control of spaces that they've lived in for generations. There are serious social implications with all of this change, and that is why we're addressing it. My methodology was a qualitative research approach. I interviewed 44 community stakeholders. I reviewed community documents, conducted online and library research, conducted spatial and demographic analysis, and I conducted a cultural landscape assessment of Mantua and Powelton Village in order to understand what has happened historically, going from the beginnings of African Americans moving to Philadelphia and into the Mantua and into West Philadelphia area, and then happening contemporarily. Now, my humanizing approach, it happened from multiple directions. I observed the neighborhood at different times and seasons and interviewed people throughout the community. I walked the neighborhood. I can't say that enough. I walked the neighborhood. I have this image here of my shoes because I walked the neighborhood so many times. I think I've seen every street in Mantua and Powelton Village. One of the great things about this process was that I was able to understand many of the conditions that people are dealing with, and I received blessings. A blessing as simple as 2 bottles of water from a resident that I was interviewing. When you're walking in Philadelphia in the summertime all day, water is like liquid gold. And one other component was I purposefully engaged in all facets of social activity to the extent of sleeping in 30th Street Station, because I really wanted to understand what are the challenges that people that are living in Powelton Village and Mantua are facing. And because of the changes that are happening in the Schuylkill Yards area, there are more people who are going to be impacted. While they were not interviewed for this particular research, their concerns were brought to my attention with this particular image. This was me waking up at about 6 o'clock in the morning as I was waiting to get on a train to head out. And I saw that the police were waking up all of the homeless people. And I guess they assumed I was a homeless person as well, because they woke me up as well. This is my research timeline. In the interest of time, I won't go over all the details, but it just provides the documentation for the method that I use. Now, I would like to take a moment to help you connect with the physical changes that have happened in Mantua and Powelton Village from 2007 to 2018. Through the use of Google Images, I've had the opportunity to go back in time, and you can also go back in time and see the changes. We have on the right a senior housing that was built. In this image, it shows a student housing that has replaced an auto repair shop. In the background and on the left, we also see new housing that has popped up. That's also student housing, and you'll see this pop up often. We have for rent signs that are on what used to be single family homes. We have images of bicycles that are on those porches, and we have over accumulations of trash that are all synonymous with student housing that's moved into the area. And so over the course of 11 years, you can see the massive changes that have happened. And for the people that have lived here, all these changes are the changes they've had to deal with. And my question is, as I talk about this, these next changes, can you spot the differences? On the right, we have the Tim Spencer mural. Philadelphia is known for murals, and Tim Spencer brought the murals. However, his mural was taken down and covered with the replacement of a student housing. On the left, we have the Primitive Baptist Church, a 125-year-old church that was replaced by student housing. Tim Spencer mural, as I mentioned, this was moved for student housing and has been located on the side. The new one is located on the side of Mount Vernon Manor. And the last one I want to discuss is Herman Rice and the changes that have happened as a result of his mural's removal. We have his mural, which was located on 34th Street and Spring Garden. However, his mural in 2009 began to be covered up by student housing as well. And if we look in the background, you'll also see a former parking lot and a laundromat that is now the location of student housing. These are the changes that people in these communities are dealing with. And what's more important is that these two particular murals, they represent icons of this community. Herman Rice was one of the leaders of the community, and Tim Spencer was one of the jewels of Mantua and brought the mural arts program. I would like to talk about the results now. So the following are the social indicators I developed based upon the interviews and observational analyses of the changes that are happening around Mantua and Powelton Village. Evidence from the research is included to support each of the noted indicators. There were three main elements that I uncovered. One was culture, and through that there was the idea of sense of belonging, changes in architecture, reduction in block parties, the preservation of historic sites, retention of houses of worship, and the preservation of murals. I'll talk about these as we go into more detail. And also the density, the community to student density and the increase in students moving into the neighborhood. And then finally, the physical and environmental changes. This is the affordable housing to market housing ratio, reduction in on-the-street parking, rising land values and property theft, and the reduction in vacant lots. So culture measures, to measure that, it involves tracking the changes in conditions that define the history and experiences of Mantua and Powelton Village residents. Sense of belonging is threatened by over-policing, racism, and an overall lack of respect for the past and present existence of long-term residents and the changing racial demographics. The following are a number of quotes that I pulled out of the interviews that I conducted. The first one relates to racism. Regan and all of the names that I mentioned are aliases of to protect the identity of my interviewees. I don't like to do the race card thing, but it seems like, they're generating a situation just for white people, the way they're taking over the neighborhood. We speak to a lot of people in the neighborhood and people treat you like people, like you don't exist. Like this is ours and we're taking it back. That's how I feel. He went on to discuss how, as he went and talked to people, they wouldn't talk to him because he was black and he would point that out to them. And he felt that it was as a result of racism that he was being treated this way. When I spoke to Brohim, a Mantua and Powelton Village business owner, he spoke about the lack of respect. He stated, I ain't gonna lie, a lot of students, they come through here. They instead of them just like walking straight down the middle of the block, they walk on the outside of the curb and stuff when they come past me. And he noted that as a business owner, as he would stand outside and he's waiting for customers to walk past his shop, This was a problem for him because within the African-American community, respect is important. When you walk when you walk by somebody, you greet them. And the fact that people not only don't greet, but they actually walk across, they walk to the further end of the sidewalk as if they're afraid to touch you, that's a problem. And then over policing. Ed said, I don't care if they're college students, Black college students, white college students, they can walk down the street. They, meaning the police, will not say nothing. We standing right here, right now, cop pull up right now, we're gonna stop and look at us and say, yo, you got ID? You got Drexel cops, Pennsylvania cops, regular cops, but all patrolling the neighborhood. Now, Ed was with 4 other residents, and they were all speaking about the impact of over-policing that has begun to occur because of all of the police forces that are patrolling their neighborhood now. And this image is used to show what that over-policing looks like. This is a map from UPenn that shows the UPenn patrol zone, University City District patrol zone, which is in black, the health system CHOP patrol zone, Drexel's patrol zone in yellow, University of Sciences, which is in orange, and the Science Center U Square patrol zones. What it doesn't show is that you also have the city of Philadelphia, who has two police districts that also patrol this area. So this is a highly patrolled area, and the residents recognize it. So let's talk about the sense of belonging. Previously, we saw this particular image of the building. This is the building that replaced the laundromat. We can see on the side of this building, 2 and 3 bedroom luxury student apartments with a fitness center, 24-hour surveillance and intercom, on-site laundry facility, which is interesting because you replace the laundry facility, yet the students don't, the community does not have access to the laundry facility, but the students do. And in a place where you're getting, you can rent a place for $600 for a house, historically, they're offering housing at $700 per bedroom. Also, the prevalence of white students walking around a predominantly Black neighborhood is also changing the sense of belonging. These are all images that I noticed as I was walking through the community. At both the periphery and in the heart of the community, you had a lot of white students that were walking around. Like, these are images that you would not have seen 20 years ago. Changes in architecture. The next few images are going to talk about positive and negative changes of the architecture that's happening. This is an example of architecture that respects the existing character of the neighborhood. You'll notice that they maintain respect for the traditional bay window versus the contemporary bay windows. There's also a respect for the existing height lines, and they maintain the porch or the stoop concept that you find with a lot of the buildings in Philadelphia. Here's another example of a positive architectural change where we can see the new construction on top of the old construction, yet they're respecting the existing neighborhood. We can see that by the porch being retained and by maintaining the bays that were there before and the height line. Now, this is an example of architecture that does not respect the existing character of the neighborhood. The height lines have been changed from in red shows the original height line, the blue shows the old height line. We now have rectangular bay windows that have now become synonymous of the student developed housing in the area. And we have the walk upstairs and the lack of porch. So I won't go into a lot of detail on all of these, just in the interest of time. But many of these images, you can see the changes that are taking place due to the architecture. The reduction in block parties is also a change. I want to talk about the preservation of historic sites. In talking with residents, there were a list, the following are a list of undocumented historic sites that are around Mantua, yet you can see these sites are not documented. Throughout the city of Mantua, the section of Mantua, you do not have historic sites. Yet when you look around other parts of the city, you have a very few historic sites that are documented. Yet when you look at other areas of the city, they are clearly documented. Houses of worship. There are many houses of worship that need to be retained in the area. The murals. These are all murals from around Mantua and Powelton Village. These all speak to the history of the community. These all need to be retained and tracked. And then when we look at density, this graph shows the community to student density. The ratio of community housing to student housing is going down, and the ratio of community beds to student beds is going down, which means that you have more student beds and more student housing that's being built and less community housing being built. Additionally, the total units and buildings constructed in Mantua between 2007 and 2019 has drastically changed. This graphic shows the market rate housing units that were built between 2007 and 2019. They are increasing. Whereas the affordable housing had a spike in 2010, yet there has been no affordable housing that's been built since then. Now, when I spoke to residents, they talked about the rising land values and property theft. In the interest of time, I won't read the quote, but I will discuss one of the issues. There was a recent report and revealed that discovered discriminatory mortgage lending all over the country, and Philadelphia was one of the biggest offenders. Black people were denied loans to both improve homes and purchase homes more than whites in the area. And we can see that the property value in Mantua and Powelton Village has been increasing steadily. And this is all within 1 year. Real quick, the last thing I want to discuss are, I looked at one particular area, which is at the gateway of Mantua and Powelton Village along 34th Street. And what I found there was that there were the number of properties that were sold between 1947 and 2020 has dramatically increased between 2013 and 2019. What was worse about that is that the value, the assessed value of the city versus the value that the property was purchased for was dramatically different. Many of the property values were purchased for way more than what the city has deemed that they're worth, which supports the fact that there are significant changes related to the increase in property value. And then the investors that are buying the property are only about 6 properties that were purchased by investors in Philadelphia. All the rest of them were investors from suburbs outside of Philadelphia and suburbs from other areas around the country. And 2 of them were investment companies who also had 81 and 59 properties respectively throughout Philadelphia. And so this just demonstrates that there are massive changes and lots of developers are coming in to invest in Philadelphia. In conclusion, the long history of racial injustice spawned by university expansion into communities of color contributes to the maintenance of racialized spaces in our society. The opportunity still exists for Drexel University to honor its mission to train the next generation to solve the world's greatest problems by uniting with the community residents of Mantua and Powelton Village to ensure the university's development activities are mutually beneficial to everyone. The following are my recommendations for Drexel University. 1, help to preserve the murals, historic sites, and other cultural elements of Mantua and Powelton Village. Provide mandatory training for students and faculty on ways to respect the residents of these 2 communities. Set aside land for affordable housing and help to eliminate the over-policing of the local neighborhood. Extend the catchment area of the new Sam Powell Elementary School to accept students from Mantua. and explore alternative real estate development models that involve residents remaining in their homes. And then preserve the area around the Patti LaBelle mural, because this is one of the most vulnerable murals. I didn't show it in here, but you'll see it in a second. That is located in that catchment, the last catchment area I explored. This research ensures that as changes take place in these two communities, there's a record of the culture that has existed here for generations. It fits along with the research that W.E.B. Du Bois explored in the 1900s with the Philadelphia Negro Study that documented African Americans in the 9th Ward of Philadelphia. It also provides a means to evaluate the way university is changing Mantua and Powelton Village, and it's as a guide for universities to use social indicators to measure the impact of their expansion activities on neighboring. In terms of future research, there's opportunity to track the continuing changes using these indicators to determine whether the community benefit agreements and the zoning changes that the community members have brought to the table will provide long-term relief for them and the social benefits they seek. To explore whether Drexel's social engagement activities are strictly to appease existing residents or whether it's for the residents' long-term benefit. And then as you saw with the Google Street View, we can use image recognition software to take these social indicators and scale them out to other university neighborhoods in Philadelphia to see if these changes are similar. Thank you, and I leave you with this image. This is the image of that section that I spoke about previously. As you can see, Westview is one of the developers, and they're developing 8 new homes, and they're starting in the mid 200,000s in a neighborhood that has historically been predominantly low income. And with that, I conclude my presentation and will accept questions.
Thank you, Kwesi, for a terrific presentation of your really wonderful and fascinating and engaging dissertation research. So we have time for 1 to 2 questions, and Kwesi, I'll let you call on the person with the question, okay?
All right. So does anybody have a question? All right, I see Sarah.
Hi, Kwesi. This was amazing. This was so rigorous and so insightful. And thank you so much for presenting your work to us here today. I'm really excited to see where this work takes you. When you were talking, you showed a map of the study area, and you showed the historical sites that are undocumented, and the move house was, the original move house was labeled. And I just wanted to share a quick story that will lead to a question, which is that across the street from that house is the first property that the original LLC of New Age Realty purchased and allowed Philadelphia police to stage in that property to monitor the move house. And so it made me start to think about how scholars, I'm thinking of Cheryl Harris, but also Ananya Roy and Nick Blomley, have been talking about the social category of property, and it's sort of how it's entwined with the police state. And so I was just, the way that you have sort of structured your research and your framework and sort of centered social indicators as a main lens to think about sustainability, equity, justice. I was wondering if you had thought about property beyond its merely economic mechanisms and sort of the social category of property. And I'm also kind of thinking about what are some of the ways that displacement happens through property and racism in the police state. So I'm thinking of like who gets to own it and under what conditions, and how things like tangled titles really come into play, and sort of displacement pressures. And I don't know if you just had any more thoughts about that you could share with us today. I'm really curious.
Oh, definitely. So I'm happy you brought up MOVE. That's a whole nother conversation that I'm happy you brought to the foreground. But in terms of property, the reason why I focus on architecture and I looked at that particular area in that around that gateway is because access, there's so many residents who don't have access. So, when you think I have a property that I'm staying in a home that's in dilapidated condition and I need to repair it, yet I can't get access to a loan to repair it, yet I see a building that has just popped up. And I know that the developer who owns that building, they also received a tax break. So there's a 10-year tax abatement that investors are able to take advantage of. Local residents just got an opportunity to get a tax break. So you have 10-year tax abatements, and then talk about the opportunity zone that West Philadelphia is in the middle of, that more investors are going to be able to take advantage of. But in order to take advantage of that, you have to be able to have capital gains. How many residents who don't own businesses have capital gains? How many residents are investors? So if you don't have a way to invest, two of those investment companies that I spoke about, when I spoke with them about, how do you do this? They talked about that if you have a retirement account, we'll set you up on a retirement account and we can use wholesale, you can purchase properties wholesale, which is how you gentrify a neighborhood. Well, when you see these things, property, the ability to have space, what my argument is actually around the preservation of these spaces is that there's change that's happening, that if the community or Drexel, if they are altruistic about their efforts, if the community really wants to save elements, you got to be focused with that. And you can focus on historical spaces, because if I own the space, then out of that space, I can have other conversations about empowerment. If I own the property, like you mentioned about Move, there is no record of the Move house that used to be there across the street from the space that you just spoke about. That house is not there. So there's no record of the residents having ever been there, no record of that significant component. There's not even a plaque. And so if you focus on how do I preserve these spaces, these properties, these elements that define our culture, then as change takes place, people can continue to recognize that I was here, and you can always tell somebody, hey, we are still here because these elements are here to prove that. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Very well.
Great, thank you, Kwesi. We have time for one more question.
Let's see. Hey, Melissa, I think Melissa had a question.
Hold on. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Hi, Kwesi. It's so wonderful to see you. It's been such a long time, even if on Zoom. So, first of all, congratulations on this wonderful, wonderful dissertation, which is, amazing that you've accomplished this while also doing everything else that you do. So it's really fantastic, and it's really wonderful. We're thrilled for you. And one of the things that I'm wondering is, this is really such amazing work, and the amount of sort of understanding the place and the spaces and how people do placemaking and how the placemaking is being undone. And you can sort of situate that in so many different literatures. It's addressing, as Sarah talked about, there's a lot of discussion now in the literature about racial capitalism and urbanization, and there's also the gentrification literature, and then there's all this work on sort of placemaking and the creation of places by communities within sort of like the Black geographies, sort of emphasis on understanding people's sort of agency, right, and how they're creating community even in these types of conditions. And so I'm wondering, and I'm sure your committee will talk to you about this, but I'm wondering if you've thought about, sort of how you're going to situate this work and around publications, if you're thinking about this as a book, or if you were thinking about maybe different articles addressing some of these different debates as well. And I don't know if you've thought about that yet, but I'm just curious, especially like what kind of debates do you want to address with this research?
Yes. So
Because you have to publish it, right? It's got to, you got to do it. The world needs,
Yes.
whether it's as a book form and stuff, this would be very powerful work, I think. So.
Yes, I've looked at it. Actually, I see it. Let me back up and say this has been such a dense process. The amount of data that was collected and being able to figure out how do I tease out that data has been one of the most challenging processes, because very similar to the last question, when I'm looking at space, question Sarah asked, looking at space, there's so many other narratives that I address that I can't go into full detail. So I do see book publication and papers for addressing this. One of the first areas that I want to explore is around the method that I used. As I was putting together the final touches to the methodology, I realized that what I've uncovered with the use of Google Street View is a very novel space, because Google Street View did not come out until 2007. And what it allows you to do, and it allowed me to do, because I left Philadelphia, is I was able to connect with the community and see the changes just like everybody else was able to see, and take an understanding of what's happened around communities. Now you can't divorce yourself from touching the ground to see what's actually happening in that space. But the fact that you can actually take policy and couple it with imagery that shows what happens over time, at least with a benchmark of 2007, with deep data and the role that big data is playing right now, that's actually a conversation I'm really, really interested in engaging in deeper, because I'm wondering how many other communities are having this type of challenge, that if we were able to note these indicators or other indicators that are specific to that community, then we could do that. The other areas around just looking at architecture, architecture is when we talk about architecture as a space, it has been very racialized for a very long time. And it is, we talk about what's happening right now with the removal of monuments all over the country because of their symbolism. Well, architecture is symbolism as well. It's one of the most permanent elements that we have. So what does it mean when you start to rid the architecture of a community from that community to replace it with new architecture? So, I mean, these are just some of the layers that I'm interested in exploring. Many more, but these are just a few that I'm interested in teasing out. In addition to just, lastly, making sure that I get the residents, get their words out there more.
That's what
one of the things that bothered me the most about this is that I went into this research with the idea that I could bring about real change. I was like, hey, I'm going to change policy and I'm going to make things change and it's going to be so great for people. And when I got into it, not only did I realize the change was happening so rapidly, I was living in, I was in Philadelphia, and then I left Philadelphia. And when I came back, a year later, 6 months later, 3 months later, I was seeing how fast that change was happening. And I realized that my research was now not about trying to stop change, but to get as much documentation about the people to say they are here, this is who they are, this is where they've lived. Because the minute you take down a mural, the minute you take down a building, a house, the minute a senior person is pushed out, you lose all of that social capital. You lose all of that knowledge about the residents that are there. So what I really hope is that I can take all of this and really put that to the forefront, because finally, this is not just a regular community. Mantua has had a national and a global impact from art, from music, with jazz artists like Shirley Scott, to performing artists like the Tarantine family. I mean, it is the mural arts program. Everyone in Philadelphia gets to take advantage of mural arts with the murals that are all over the city. And that happened because of Tim Spencer and the mural arts program. So, I mean, these are the stories, the work that the Mantua community planners did. That stuff has to get out there, because what they were able to do in terms of taking their community back in the 1980s and tying their community's growth to policy, that's something that has to be studied, because communities of color and other marginalized communities follow that practice and get themselves embedded within policy to protect themselves as changes take place. You know, when you look at the urban renewal document for their community, it actually says that you have to talk to the Mantua community if you're going to do any changes in that community. That language does not exist in any other plan, or any other area of Philadelphia when it came to urban renewal. So what I hope to do is get the message about what power came out of this community, how they were able to empower themselves, how they were able to bring resources like parks and recreational facilities and affordable housing at times where in the 1980s, Black communities were being ravaged by drugs, were being ravaged by over-policing and you know, imprisonment. You know,
Yeah.
while that was happening, they were creating that change. And so you know, those are just some of the areas that I intend to bring to the forefront.
Yeah, so. I think because of the richness of the work that you've done, you know, the ethnographic work that you've done, I just think this work is so timely, and I think that you know, it would lend itself to sort of a book-length manuscript that would be able to kind of position it in all of these different. It's sort of like this, you know, with what's going on, you know, with the current movement and all the rest of it. So I just think it's just a wonderful piece of work that you've done. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Kwesi. So we have one last question from Ricky Sanders.
Hey, Dr. Sanders, how you doing?
So let me see. Kwesi, are you able to unmute Ricky? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, yeah. Ricky, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kwesi. This was fascinating. I really wanted to be able to hear it. The question I have is, what do you think the impact of COVID is on all of this spatial planning? Yeah, I mean, the world as we know it is going to change, and especially the spatiality of it. And I'm wondering if you have thought about factoring that into your work.
So great question. I've actually been looking at COVID from an educational standpoint. We know Philadelphia in the school system is not good. One of my recommendations regarding the Samuel Powell School is because of the fact that the Samuel Powell School's catchment zone is Powelton Village, yet Powelton Village has next to 0 children. That's like a slap in the face to the community. And so when you look at COVID and what's happening with COVID, I see that it's creating a huge divide between the new normal. How do students get access to education? And I'm actually very concerned that students particularly students in marginalized communities, will continue to be marginalized even further because they're being forced to go into spaces like, they're in schools that are poor quality, poor indoor air quality, and they're forced to go there because parents have no choice but to work. Or the parents say, I'm not going to send my child to school, but that child doesn't have access to internet. And just in my experience, on the academia side, we had students in college who did not have access to internet. So there are students that are in Mantua, they don't have access to internet. So how are they going to get access to the education that they need in an environment like COVID? When you look at how you can deliver content, though, I think there's an opportunity to deliver content virtually to these communities if we say, you know what, we're gonna assure every one of these communities has access to the internet. We're going to ensure every single one of these communities has access to a laptop, and we're going to line them up with real education that is going to prepare them. In my research, research, what I found that was one of the most halfway disgusting and unfortunate things simultaneously is that, you know, Drexel and I'll bring in University of the Sciences because I was looking at them originally and attending meetings there. The community said, we need jobs. Well, the University of Sciences said, hey, we have a lot of jobs to offer. And they gave out a big packet of jobs. The problem was all the jobs, it required, a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD. When we have a community that from kindergarten to high school, they are purposely denied the access to education. And I know that firsthand because of the challenges that I had to homeschool my own kids because I felt that it was child abuse to send my child to an educational system that was going to dumb them down. And so it is imperative that we find strategies, especially during COVID, because you have too many children who will not be able to pull themselves out of poverty. They will not be able to pull their families out of poverty because we are purposefully, as a society, we are purposefully dumbing them down. And we're putting them in a space. I mean, when you have a child who has no access to any quality education, and then you tell them that you have a job for them, yet all the jobs in the innovation zone are geared towards STEM. They're all geared towards technology. They're all geared towards coding. How many children have access to coding in Mantua and Powelton Village? How many parents have access to that knowledge? How many know where to find it? You definitely have your diamonds in the rough. You know, I'm not going to paint the entire community with a paintbrush that says everyone doesn't have access to it. But as a vast majority, you have too many folks in these communities that do not have access to the resources that are going to allow them to be a part of the new normal. And all we're going to see is a more astronomical increase in the divide between the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately, with the development that's happening, I'm actually afraid so many of these families are going to be pushed out of their communities and are going to be pushed out into the hinterlands, more suburban spaces, that they're not even going to be, they're going to be so far off the radar that we won't even understand what's going on with them. But we'll say education is the key. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you. I was
Very
interested
welcome.
in more spatial analysis, but what you said was very pertinent to the issue, and I appreciate it.
Great, thank you all so much. And of course, thank you to Kwesi for his wonderful research and this really excellent Q&A that raises a lot of points that we should continue to discuss. But at this time, we are going to end the presentation and the Q&A portion of the dissertation. And so we will ask everybody who is not on the committee to leave the meeting now. But again, thank you all for coming. And then Kwesi, at this time, I'll also ask you to end